Welcome. There's a very famous Rashi this week on the Pusik Va'ovai Hayoim Ela Ayin. And Rashi quotes the Medrash that said, Yofa Sichasam Shel Avdi Avos Yoise Mitrosan Shel Bonim. Sharei Parsha Shel Eliezer Kfula B'Torah Ve'ilu Harbe Gifet Torah Lo Nitnu Ele Beremiz. So this Medrash is noticing a very important thing that we have to notice whenever we talk about the Torah. The Torah has the text, which we can call Torah Shabiksav, the text of what we read in the Torah and the Chumash. And there is the Torah Shebal Peh, the elaboration of the lessons that we learn from it, the halachas that we learn out of it. And there seems to be a very great imbalance between the importance of things, in other words, the relevance of different laws, different halachas, different minhagim, different things that we need to do, which are elaborated upon in the halacha, in Torah Shebal Peh, in the Gemara, and the Mishnah. And some of them are more important, some of them have a lot of halachas. For example, Hilchas Shabbos are very long, other halachas are very long. And there's a disconnect between the length and importance of halacha and the length and importance of the text in the Torah. Because when we read the Torah, the text of the Torah, we see the entire Hilchas Shabbos is like the Mishnah says in Chagiga, it's like a mountain hanging by a thread or by a hair. Because if we read the Torah, it talks about Shabbos many times, but to talk about the halachas and lamates malachas and all kind of thousands and tens of thousands different details that we need to know in order to keep Shabbos according to halacha, these do not get mentioned in the Torah. And on the other hand, when we look at the Torah, we see a long elaboration with every detail and every little pitchivka that happened of different stories that seem to be entirely uninformative. Not only do they seem to be not very interesting and not giving us some major important thing that we do something with it, they seem to be totally informationless, as we see in this whole story of Eliezer, where the Torah repeated twice or maybe three times the same exact story. In other words, it said the whole story. Eliezer came to the well and he had made his whole Tanai, and he said, if I'll find a girl for my master's son. And then he comes to Lavan's house, to Basil's house, and he says the whole story again. And it could have just said, Vayomer Eliezer, Kol ma we learned earlier. And instead the Torah goes on and says again the whole story, with the whole elaboration that he said again, as if we're in that period, we're in that time, and we're just listening to Eliezer repeat the story that we just read in the text 5 seconds ago. And this Rashi uses to say something which needs to be explained, which needs to be understood, that there's something greater, something nicer, yafa, better, more important in the Torah of the Avdi Avos, not even of the Avos. We're not even talking about something that Avram Avinu himself did, or Yitzchak, or Yaakov. We're talking about his slave Eliezer, which is going b'shlichas of Avram, and he's going to do something for him, and he's saying the whole story again, and that the Torah found important to repeat over and over, while many things that seem to be very relevant to our life, and very relevant to halacha, and very relevant to how the Torah actually gets done, gets fulfilled in our life, seem to be very short. Now I think there's a very basic explanation what's actually going on here. Meaning to say, when we talk about Avdi Avos, Sichasan Shel Avdi Avos, we don't only mean that there's something more important in a history that once happened to Avdi Avos than in the halacha of what we need to do in Hilchas Shabbos, in Hilchas Mila, in Hilchas Kiddush HaChodesh, whatever it is. But what's more importantly, what it's saying is that there's a lot more deeper questions, a lot more serious questions, a lot more serious dilemmas and doubts that we have to learn from the Torah, how to act in them, in stories, in various very simple, basic, or not simple, but complex and elaborate, but stories that are simple life, more than halach. In other words, when we ask a question, what does a Yid do on Shabbos? How do you keep Shabbos? Now the answer to that, although it's very complex, there's a lot of details, a lot of halacha that you might have to learn, but they're all quite of simple and kind of clear. We don't really have that many doubts about how to keep Shabbos. Alright, you'll keep the lamates malachas, and you won't do all these 39 things and all the toldos and thousands of things that come out of them. And we kind of know what to do. And if you make a mistake, you'll bring a carbon chatas, you'll do tshuva. You even know what to do if you make a mistake. There's very little real dilemma, real doubts. There might be some questions, some sveikas in halacha, but even for that, we have rules. What do we do? Sveika deraisa lekila, sveika lechimra, sveika derabanan lekila. We have all kinds of. We basically know what to do. There isn't something. It doesn't really need to be elaborated, and it also kind of can be deducted from what we learn. So if we understand the idea of Melechas Shabbos, so we could just use our mind, and that's what Chazal did, and figure out the entire Hilchas Shabbos from like one pasuk. It's just more than enough. But then we have different questions, different subjects, and these subjects can be called subjects of life. And one of the big ones, which is actually a subject of the story of Eliezer and Yitzchak and Rivka over here, is a question of shidduchim, a question of marriage. And when a person comes and asks the question, who should I marry? Should I marry this girl or should I marry that girl? Should I go to the Bnei Choron, I have to go back to my family, or should I find someone from Canaan? This is not a question that you could find in any Shulchan Aruch. And it sounds simpler, it's a very simple question. Okay, which girl should I marry? But it's actually a much more complex question, and a much less known question than the question of how to keep Shabbos, or what exactly the halacha of the Erev on Shabbos is. And that's actually why this imbalance exists in the text of the Chumash. Because the real message of the Torah, the real thing that the Torah is supposed to teach us, or we're trying to at least figure out from reading the Torah, from learning Chumash every year, from reading this Sichos and Shlav De'oves, is actually how to relate and how to act in questions like that. Questions like who to marry, like which job should I take, where should I live? And if you read Parshas Chumash Bereishis and all the stories in the Tanakh, but especially Parshas Bereishis, especially Parshas like this, we see that the big thing to figure out, I think that you need to be obvious for that. You need to be literally Avraham Avinu to have a clarity in that, to understand the answer to life's questions. There are the questions of who should my son marry, and how should we do the shidduch, and how much money should we pay, and how do we figure out? And these are not questions that you could open any book ever and figure them out. We need to go through them again and again, and we discuss them again and again, and we go through every detail again and again, and hopefully after all of this, we'll be able to know what to do. We'll be able to have something like Besul and live and say, "Me Hashem yotza adova lenichal dabre lecha ra'ai tov." In other words, from this Chazal say we learn that me HaTorah, me Neviim, me Aksivim, me Hashem ish al ish. And of course, when Chazal say that, it doesn't just say, "Well, thank you very much." We all know that everything is b'ashgacha pratis and everything Hashem does. So there's no big chiddush that also shidduchim, also marriages are from Hashem. What they're actually saying is that certain questions you just have to see, you have to rely, you have to see that they're more complex than human knowledge, than human cognition could handle. Questions like Torah Shel Bonim are kind of simple, very basic human mind. Humans understand. We cannot say it's Me Hashem Hilchas Shabbos. Hilchas Shabbos are given Me Hashem, but then they're very simply and very clearly elaborated by the human mind. But questions like Sichos and Shlav De'oves, questions like Me Hashem ish al ish, nobody really knows the answer. Nobody can really prove you why they married a certain person or why they should. But what happens is we look for signs, and we have ways of looking for signs. And there's the whole subject of nichesh, with Eliezer Eved Avrom. There's a correct way of finding signs and an incorrect way of finding signs, which might be elaborated. But these are the real questions. These are the more interesting questions. These are the things that we really need to ascribe to God. This is the things that we say, Me Hashem ish al ish. In the end of the day, both your arguments pro, both your arguments con, they're not enough to actually decide the question. It's not like a halacha question that we have 3 arguments pro and 3 arguments con, and then, okay, we'll know the answer. It's Me Hashem. And then we don't speak not ra and not tov. I cannot tell you why I disagree. I can't even tell you why I agree. And the real things in life are just us kind of trying to do like Eliezer Eved Avrom and listen to the signs that we have, listen to the little knowledge that we have, to the little simunim, to the little like nichesh that we find, and try to figure out how to act, how to live in this world. And that's our big question, our big reason why we continue to read and reread basic human stories of people going and getting married and living in certain places and doing certain things, which are actually way more interesting. Just the story is more interesting, and way more interesting questions and important questions than Torah Shel Bonim, which in the end of the day are just easy and simple. So let's hope that we could all figure out how to live our life in a certain clarity.